So greetings, everyone. Welcome to the 2021 edition of Ecoartspace Earth Day for Trees. This is our second event today, the Eternal Forest. This will be a global exchange forum led by Evgenia Emets, the founder of the Eternal Forest in Portugal. Her vision is to create 1,000 eternal forest sanctuaries and protect them for 1,000 years through art and community, which she will share more about with us. Today, Evgenia will lead us in a cross-cultural discussion with artists and researchers who are working with forest ecosystems, exploring themes of trees and forests and the guardianship or long-term protection of them. Before that happens though, we will start off with 3 guest speakers, and then Evgenia will present her work and will invite the discussion and will lead us into breakout rooms before we end. So you're welcome to leave your video on, and please, keep yourself muted until you're called upon to speak. First, our first speaker will be Ruby Reed, and Ruby is the co-founder of the transformative education platform. I'm not sure if I'm saying this one right. Advaya. Okay, good. And she's going to provide us an overview of an upcoming Forest Guardian online workshop that's going to start here in like another week or so, and it'll go through the summer. And I think there may still be spots left, but Ecoartspace has, I think, around 13 of our members are participating as a group. So we're very excited about this and look forward to hearing from Ruby more about it. Let's see here. Add pen. Do you have your, I'm going to unmute you or ask you to unmute.
Hi. Hey,
Welcome.
everyone. Thank you so much. It's really great to be here. And it's been amazing to learn about your group, Ecoartspace, and all the work you're doing through our conversations around the course. I was really inspired by how you were bridging ecology and artistic practice together to create change. So thank you for having me. So shall I start?
Yep, take it away.
So as Patricia said, my name's Ruby, and together with my sister Christabel, we founded Advaya, which is a transformative education platform, which creates courses and programs exploring the intersection of ecology, community, and well-being. And we've also co-founded a charity called Initiative Earth and another educational platform called My Eco Resolution. And through all these, there's been a constant balance to be struck between education and awareness and action and impact. And over time, I've been increasingly realizing that they're not the same thing. Like, we can understand a lot and we can learn a lot and we can know a lot, but it doesn't necessarily impact our actions or how we are living in the world. Especially now with echo chambers of social media, there's a sense of a performative activism and a performative personality that doesn't always translate on the ground with behavioral change or policy change, or much empathy with others. So out of this context, we've tried to create a course that was a little bit different, which is Guardians of the Forest. And it's an online course exploring how we can transform our relationship with the world around us, starting with trees. It's an experiment and probably won't be perfect, but we're hoping to bridge that gap. It brings together practitioners from 30 different nations around the world to share spiritual, ecological, cultural, and legal aspects of forest guardianship. The course consists of 7 bioregionally focused modules split over 14 weeks. And the learnings are embedded in traditional forest wisdom with under the understanding that will enrich human life in these times of ecological and personal crisis, as well as drawing from tools that explore our relationships with the natural living world, such as practices, artistic creation, embodiment, and somatics, and then concrete practical approaches as well that are grounded in action and impact. And it goes without saying that many iconic trees around the world are facing extinction, and forests, including marine forests, are being decimated. Like drought, megafires, temperature change, fungal disease, urban development, invasive species, and of course felling, timbering, and industrial monoculture are the main culprits. However, the reason why all this is happening is due to human industrial activity that's directly related to feeding the global economy. That's the deep cause of forest collapse, is not global warming, but a human culture of destruction and domination. And humans and forests have always evolved codependently. And in cultures that live in harmony with the land around them, every member of that society takes on a responsibility for maintaining that shared common interest, which is forest life. And it's this multi-species collaboration and cooperation that defines humanity much more than the idea of humanity as virus that we often see spoken about in media today. Neuroscience, for example, is showing more and more that we are wired for caring and sharing, more so than winning. Yet we're again sold the story of competition, domination, and power over. And it's this story that defines the dominant culture and growth-based economy of the world today. A culture of corporate and globalized capitalism, colonization, competition, ecological destruction, individualism, patriarchy, and so on. It's interesting when you think about the word economy and ecology, both having the same roots, oikos in Greek, the home, management of the home, and the economy is management of resources and exchange. And if our economy is built on these destructive forces and our culture is therefore built on those destructive forces, it's going to permeate how we relate to the natural living world and all those who aren't the dominant ones. So that's how gender violence is linked to environmental violence and racial violence and so on. And as I said before, it's this crisis of culture that sits at the root of the ecological and social crises of today. It's life-denying by definition, but it doesn't define humanity. And that's increasingly clear the more we learn from people who are still living in relationship with the natural world around them, wherever they are in the world, whether it's Scandinavia, Ecuador, or the Congo. The first step is to realize that we don't have to identify with this way of being, and that it's something that's been imposed and developed over time, and then take action from that place. Rian Eisler is an amazing individual who speaks about this in terms of the partnership and domination continuum. And she was a refugee from Nazi Germany and teaches a lot about the need to go beyond binary understandings of left versus right, which she sees as stuck within the same mode of thinking of dominator and dominated. Rian speaks about the domination and partnership continuum as a spectrum. And at one end of the spectrum, there's the domination model or the power over paradigm that defines the culture of the modern world and economy. And at the other is a partnership model of traditional cultures that's defined by interrelationship. And so based on that premise, we wanted to learn from practitioners and teachers from around the world and explore ways of creating cultures of interrelationship, partnership, and mutually beneficial relationships. So it's about this inner and outer transformation. And that's why we called it Guardians of the Forest, because we understood forest guardians as all living beings that take an active and dedicated role in maintaining the harmonious society that is in a forest. So, for example, in the forest, there's the fungi that make up the mycorrhizal networks, whose roots, the fungi that make the mycorrhizal networks and the using of the roots to communicate and share nutrients, the birds and animals that plant seeds and spread them across large areas, the bees and insects that pollinate flowers, worms decomposing organic matter, wood lice, and the list goes on. And humans also have a role to play in that ecology. So we see forest guardians as those that take on that more than human responsibility of care and act from there, adopting it as a role to live by. It's tied to land and place, as well as what's been in the past and what's coming in the future. So despite the irony of it being online and international, we wanted to really encourage intimate relationship with place, wherever participants find themselves. So a relocalization of attention and economy, or a thinking global and an acting local. And we also wanted to provide a space for people who are on the journey to really learn from each other, as well as be guided by the experts. So there are many amazing participants. And among the teachers, we're bringing together activists, artists, elders, scientists, philosophers, ceremonialists, and much more. We wanted to inspire curiosity and re-enchantment around the world around us, somatics and embodied relationships, and then action and impact in regards to planting, community building, activism, and land justice. So as I said, there's 7 modules, each of which consists of 2 weeks. And so we wanted to get the opportunity to go deeply with each teacher. So in each week, there's a 3-hour session consisting of 2 one-hour workshops followed by a roundtable discussion. And the modules begin in Northeast Asia, where we explore embodying the forest with practices such as Shirin-yoku. And then we go to Britain and Ireland to explore plant and tree wisdom. And then ancestral futures is the next module in the boreal forests and southern Rockies of Russia, Canada, and Sweden. And then the austral forest is exploration of forest culture in Chile, Australia, and New Zealand. And then we go to sub-Saharan and equatorial Africa, so the countries of Liberia, Kenya, Tanzania, and Chad. Then tropical forests in South America, Brazil, Paraguay, Peru, Ecuador, and Colombia, and then in Southeast Asia, so Papua New Guinea, Indonesia, Sri Lanka, and India. And it's a real honor to be bringing these different voices together who have been unbelievably, have had an unbelievably inspiring lives and have created true action on the ground where they live. And alongside each of the live sessions, each teacher will set readings and practices, as well as going deeper tasks. And it's all mapped onto these 5 demands, which are set out by the COP23 Guardians of the Forest movement, which is a separate movement, but one of our partners. And it's an incredible network of Indigenous and community leaders from Latin America, Indonesia, and Africa, which was set up in 2017. And which journeyed through Europe, delivering their urgent message to the COP UN Climate Change Conference. And now ahead of every COP summit, they continue the campaign to advocate for their 5 demands, which are recognition to land, territories and resources, consent, then zero violence, the 4th is direct funding, and the 5th is ancestral knowledge. And so shared learning and communication is really central, as I mentioned. And so we're using this platform so that all of the different participants can share their knowledge and insights and perspectives and create their own separate events and seminars. And likewise, we're working with some amazing partners. So I feel a bit awkward talking about a course that I'm doing because it feels like promotion, and I really don't like to use the space for that. Like I hope that that the ideas behind it have come across, and the reasons for which we were doing it have like sit well with you. And I'd love to hear any insights or thoughts. And thank you for listening.
Thank you, Ruby. We're so excited. I've got it, on my calendar through the whole summer. Are there still spaces?
Yeah, there are still spaces, and we've got a lot of bursary. There's no one would be turned away for lack of resources. So we have bursary places and subsidized and things like that. So you can get in touch.
It's a huge undertaking. I mean, the really interesting part is how we're going to connect with people all over the world and connect with forests that we've never even, known about. So it's really wonderful that you put this together. Thank you, Ruby.
Thank you so much.
Let's see here. I'm going to remove your pen. Now, Lila, I think she's here. I'm going to find her and pin her.
Yes, I am here.
Let's see. How am I? There, pen. Yeah, talk a little. Let me get my pen off.
Sure, no worries.
I'm trying to find you to pin you. There you are.
Okay.
Talk.
Hi. Mic check. 1, 2.
I want to introduce you though.
Sure. Go right ahead.
Yeah, real quick. Let's see here. Lila June Johnston is an Indigenous poet and musician, scholar, and community organizer of Dene, Navajo, and I can't say Cheyenne, but
Setsistissi.
Say it again.
Setsistissi.
Setsistissi. And European lineages from Taos, New Mexico. I believe you're in Santa Fe?
Not at the moment, no.
She will share from an Indigenous perspective on the sacredness of forest. Now, Lila was a speaker last year. She went for half an hour last year. This is just a short introduction today, and I do have a video that's on our website of her talk from last year. But I just wanted to tell you, Lila, that one of the things that I took away from that event, and that it's really changed me around my relationship with nature. And there's so many, I think, Anglo people who have this perspective that, the earth would be better off without us. And you basically said, that's not true. Nature needs us. And so I just want to thank you for giving me that gift, and that, I'm sharing that. And it's interesting how people react to it too. They get kind of defensive, like as if I don't know what I'm talking about. And maybe I would have done that before too, but when you said it, it hit a nerve. And yeah.
Sure, yeah. And I have 10 minutes, correct?
Sure. Yep.
Okay, 10 minutes-ish. Yeah. I've been, of course, knee deep in research for this dissertation, really looking at indigenous land management practices across the continent, across the world, really. And yeah, there's many examples where human beings become what we call a keystone species, which is a species that if you were to remove them from the ecosystem, part or all of the system would collapse. So, for example, the Heiltsuk Nation in Bella Bella Island, British Columbia, they hand plant kelp forests along the coastlines, and they've been doing it for thousands of years. And this kelp forest provides the strata for the surface area for herring fish to lay their eggs. And this influx of egg nutrients and calories into the island ecosystem actually ends up feeding wolves and bears and salmon, and then up the food chain to killer whales and sea lions and on and on. So that's sort of that's sort of one example I always like to talk about. And I have to credit my classmate Vina Brown, who is Heiltsuk herself, who taught me a lot about that. And another example is, the Great Plains. A lot of people don't understand that these grasslands, which were carbon sinks, which stabilized soil systems, were actually managed by indigenous fire. Low intensity burns done in a, patchy form, not just burning the whole thing, but just patches. And they were done in the fall. And many indigenous nations in the Midwest and in the plains have lunar calendars, and sort of the September and October moons are always named for the burns. There's a grass burning moon from the Miami Nation, or the smoky moon from the Miami Nation. That's September and October. And so this fire transforms these sort of dormant grasses into nutrient dense ash, which injects the soil system with all of this nutrients. The fire also sort of eliminates any competing tree species or shrub species that would normally invade grasslands and sort of overtake grasslands. And so the gentle yet persistent pressure of human fire really actually maintained, and in some cases created, the Great Plains as we know it, which in turn, of course, supported the buffalo and a host of other species. They're very biodiverse. Of course, in the early 1900s, late 1800s, indigenous fire was illegalized, prohibited. Indigenous peoples were decimated. And as these farmers moved westward into these depopulated homelands of indigenous peoples, they brought with them the plow. And between 1909 and 1929, wheat farmers had plowed through 32 million acres of American grassland, native grasslands. And they tore up all of this grass, mostly buffalo grass and blue grama grass, these root systems that held the soil in place. And then we got what they call the Dust Bowl. So indigenous management of soil, water, fisheries, the Chesapeake Bay was home to an incredible oyster fishery. We have archaeological evidence of, when people would eat the oysters, they throw them in these midden piles, these sort of like ancient trash heaps, compost heaps. And we've, analyzed those shells, and It shows that Algonquin peoples ate oysters out of Chesapeake Bay for 10,000 years straight. And over those 10,000 years, it's 5 times as old as Jesus, the shell size actually increased in size, meaning they not only sustainably harvested oysters from this bay, but they actually maintained it and nourished it and grew the oyster population. And of course, the oysters were just one of many, many, many species that the Algonquin nations would harvest and eat and take care of. And under American management, the Chesapeake oyster population has collapsed in less than 300 years, and you'd be hard pressed to find an edible oyster in Chesapeake Bay. So, indigenous peoples, not just in the Americas, but in Europe, Asia, Africa, Australia, the island systems, the world over, we have always been a species that supports the system in our highest expression of our humanhood. We are nourishers of these systems, and to the point where if you were to remove us, I mean, just like any other species, the system should suffer, because we're all here for a reason. Creator doesn't make mistakes. Now our fear does make mistakes, and our fear inhibits Creator from moving through us, and has caused many problems, obviously, with the help of what I call coyote spirit. It really tricked us real good as of late, and turned us against each other, turned us against our mother, turned us against ourselves. But the intentional design, the original design, was to be an integral part of the system and be a supportive part of the system. Now, talking about forests, that's really important, especially in this discussion of eternal forests and forest conservation. I probably should have talked about this sooner, since my time's almost up, but suffice it to say that the national park system has done more to destroy forest systems than arguably, or at least as much as timber companies and corporations and industries have. Why? Because the National Park Service's hands-off policy, just don't burn it, don't touch it, don't harvest it, is actually not what the forest needs. In my opinion, based on some of the research that has been coming out, is that indigenous peoples were heavily participatory in the forest system. We would burn around the forest floor, which had a really positive impact on the tree populations, because these are low severity fires, right? These are not catastrophic fires. And these low severity fires, again, bring nutrients into the soil. They eliminate competing vegetation. And one of the key elements that you see across the board is our trees are spaced widely. And this is important because A, it prevents catastrophic fire. B, these trees get to be what they want to be. Whereas in these really crowded forests, everyone's fighting for the canopy, and you get really tall, skinny trees that are kind of all competing for limited soil, nutrients, water, sunlight. And you get a lot of sick trees versus a few healthy trees. And so these sick trees often get blights, they get viruses, they get wiped out, get pine beetle, thing like that. So spacing the trees apart is preventative of forest disease, which arguably is why the American chestnut disappeared, is because our widely spaced chestnut forests, we're talking chestnuts, trees bigger around the trunk than my arms can even reach, massive chestnut forests that were destroyed because of the decimation of indigenous peoples who managed them. And these chestnuts starting to crowd together, and the chestnut blight has just pretty much collapsed the American chestnut population. So as we talk about these eternal forests, I would just, put my little plug in there of like complete hands-off conservationist attitudes towards forest management has been a abysmal failure in the United States. We have intense wildfires, which people blame climate change, which is partially true, but more so, they've eliminated the indigenous peoples who used to tend these forests like a gigantic garden. And I will spare you all of my nerdy examples, but suffice it to say, every Euro-American explorer who encountered these old growth forests had their minds blown. They were just like, whoa, these trees are huge, these spaced apart. It looks like a park. You always hear them say that. It looks like a park. It looks like a park. And in between the trees are these luxuriant grasses, which who loves luxuriant grasses, but buffalo, deer, elk. So they create this understory population. So yeah, there's a lot to say there, but I will leave it at that. And just to, consider that sometimes our well-intended conservationist attitudes are actually not grounded in the deeper ecological history and the human ecology of an area. And if you want more on that, I'd recommend Charles Mann, 1491, Tending the Wild by M. Cat Anderson, and hopefully a book I'll write someday soon. But thank you all so much for your time.
Thank you, Lila. Yeah, the 1491 is awesome, and he's working on a new book. Have you heard about that?
No, I haven't. No.
It's actually a speculative future, and it's the Southwest. And the native people get back, indigenous people get their land back.
Oh, great.
Yeah, it's
yeah,
great.
I like that ending.
So cool. I heard him at a book, I think it was a Harvard bookstore or something, giving a talk last summer, and he talked about it. I was like, ooh, this sounds excellent. So cool. Well, thank you so much. I know that's short, and I'd love to keep, having you share with us, because you're so generous with your knowledge, and we'll hope that you can stay with us a little longer. I know you have another talk at 2. Okay, I'm gonna.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, I'm going to. I thought I removed the pen. This is Evgenia, and she's going to introduce our next speaker.
Thank you so much. Well, first of all, I would like to say thank you so much for sharing, Ruby and Lila, and thank you so much, Patricia, for having us. Thank you, Ecoartspace. I'm really excited about this sharing today on this very, very special day. It's really meaningful, and already there's a whole trail of thoughts that I'm starting to have, so I'm going to share later. But today, I would like to bring on Ines Ferreira Norman. And Ines, are you with us? Can you just unmute yourself so that we can see you? And then fantastic. And then I'll make an introduction. First of all, I would like to say that Ines, territorially speaking, is about 1 hour from me north. We are both in Portugal. We are neighbors. Yeah, hopefully we'll see each other in person very soon. So physically, we're quite close to each other. So Ines is an artist, curator, farmer, writer, and editor focused on ecology and activism. Her artistic research and practice informs her role as artistic director of a project called Materia Cyclica, or Cyclic Matter. The project is a physical project on the land in Peniche, a municipality in slightly north from Lisbon. And it's creating a plentiful garden in an ecological reserve for local community and international artists to experiment in, as well as tools to provoke change in our habits of food consumption. Cyclic Matter, an eco-arts organization that provides platforms, tools, and strategies for a transition to an ecocentric culture. Ines also believes in the metaphysical dimension of life, and that informs much of the process of her work and activism. Ines, over to you.
Thanks, Evgenia. Thanks Patricia, for having me. I'm thrilled to be here to share a little bit about my artistic practice and then also about my work, my activist work with the community here in the west coast of Portugal. I'm going to share my screen because I've put some visuals together.
Okay, I'm going to have to make you a co-host.
Yes.
Then.
Yeah, great. So I'm going to start with a little bit about my artistic practice, which my current research started basically about 8 years ago when my mother died. And I started questioning who were making all these decisions that impacted people's communities and people's livelihoods, and where did this knowledge came from? Where did these decision makers acquire this knowledge? And because I was always interested in geology, I started creating analogies between the collision of knowledge and mantle tectonics. So very soon I became interested in geopolitical contexts of extraction. And this particular piece of work is called Terra Nostra Diagnosis. It was very important because there was a penny drop situation here. I wanted to experience what drilling a piece of the earth and how did it feel like. And I ended up having another kind of sculpture. So I ended up sculpting my own body with all sorts of injuries, all sorts of scratches, wounds. So this was a very literal and clear sort of epiphany I had, which was what we are doing to the earth, we are doing to ourselves. So this kind of motivated a lot of my activism into sort of enter the process of healing through my art making as well. I also researched a lot on how did fossil fuels or energy were a driver for conflict and how the capitalist societal model we live in creates debris and is based on a linear produce, consume, waste. And then I also became attached to working with place and started visiting geological sites to produce my artwork. So these two things combined motivated me to use a circular economy model into my practice, both materially and also conceptually. So basically, for example, in this piece of work, I have a sculpture made by HDPE milk bottles that I collected from around a neighborhood in London. And then this piece originated into a video piece, and then the video piece originated into some illustration work. Then this illustration work led into some more illustration work that was actually based on the initial rock collection that I showed you. So it became conceptually a circular economy as well as materially. Funnily enough, in the meantime, and funnily enough, we were talking about fires in Portugal in October 2017. There was a huge fire crisis. Half of the country burned down, and a piece of land I was very emotionally attached to, and I actually inherited that piece of land as well, it was affected by these fires. So my entrepreneurial instinct kicked in, and I won a bursary at the University College of London in Green Tech Enterprise and started formulating cyclic matter. So cyclic matter was born in May 2019. I'm not going to give you the spiel again because Evgenia did an excellent job at saying what we do, but succinctly, basically we're trying to provoke an eco-centric culture. And we are based on 3 pillars: ecology, art, and community. But the idea is to create an ecosystem of its own as well, mimicking nature, centered around human interaction with nature. We're only 2 years old, as I've told you, and setting up an organization that is about human interaction with nature in the middle of pandemic has not been easy at all. We are working to comprise a constellation of 3 spaces: the artist residency by the sea, the gallery and workshops in a rural area, and the community garden. The house, the artist residency, is currently being refurbished using dumpster, recycled, secondhand, post-petroleum and natural materials. We are approaching completion, so we're hoping to be able to start hosting this summer. On the gallery front, we represent 6 artists, and they are emerging artists. They're fantastic. Please visit our website to check out their work. Their work is all about these intersections between man and nature. Some have a more technological sort of aspect to them. Others have a more sort of magic and metaphysical approach. Because we basically didn't manage to get our first gallery partner, what we've been doing with our artists is a podcast series. So please visit our SoundCloud. We have now released 2 of them, but we hope to release the other 4 very soon. But the reason why I'm here is the community garden. So this is the space we have. The core idea of the artistic community garden is a place that is nurtured by people through their interaction with nature and territory, to return to what indigenous peoples used to have and still have to a certain extent, as Lila pointed out, this is still happening, which is nature culture and the traditional and traditional ecological knowledge. We are situated in a place called Planalto das Cesaredas. We own 2,000 square meters of land, so it's a small portion of land, and it has a particular geological formation. This is where Pangaea started being divided in the context of the Atlantic Ridge between the Americas and Europe. And we want this to be a place dedicated to land art, as well as the nurturing of the land and our soul. Currently, we have 2 communities of people nurturing this land. So we have the composteiros, which is, it's an untranslatable word in English. And these are people who give us their kitchen scraps every Monday through our door-to-door collection service in Peniche. And then we have the tree guardians. We have the people who adopted the trees and they become guardians of the land as well. The idea is that if you care for the tree, the garden is yours to use and to enjoy, and you become a guardian of the land as well. So we use what the community of the composteiros give us to literally nurture the commitment of the community of the tree guardians. At the moment, we have 18 adopted trees from people in Portugal, the UK and France. We've got a whitethorn, a heather, 8 European oaks, 4 North American oaks, 2 walnut trees and 2 holm oaks. We use permaculture as our principle and as our guidelines in the majority of what we do. And at the moment, we've only been able to host events related to ecology, but we're really looking forward to start hosting artists at our residency so that they can use the garden to stage their art, and hopefully this will bring more attention to the garden. So these are some of the events that we've had. We've had constructions and to use the natural materials that we had. So in this case, there was canes being used, but we also learned how to make rope out of bramble. So activities, very simple activities like that for people just to enjoy what's around them and enjoy the feeling of being in the wild again, and just connect with the wilderness. Then we had the collective planting day where we started reforesting the land. And then we had recently To Care for a Tree Day, in which we just made the tree, we cared for the soil by using the compost, and then we covered it with mulch. And we also created some sheltering devices because of shade, because basically we have scorching hot summer season in there, and the baby trees would die basically because they have no parents above them. So we are just mimicking what nature would do in their natural setting by giving them shade and a humid soil. Another part of the project is also the bee garden. So we have an initiative that's called Protect Pollinators, and we have schools coming in to dig. So it's this left area here in pink on the garden, and basically we have students coming in. They dig up a swale. The terrain is very steep in this area of the garden, so we have to use water retention techniques to help out. Swale is one of them. We also dug up terraces, for instance, in another area. And the idea is that now they are designing now. We've launched a contest, designing a contest, so that they choose perennial melliferous plants, and then we're going to select the winning design, and then they're going to come over and plant the flowers themselves. The garden is also open to people, the associated members, to grow their vegetables. We have been regenerating the soil by pouring directly the kitchen scraps onto it, nurturing the soil. As you can see in this last picture, here we already have little worms steeping through the soil, which is always a good sign. But the main issue here is water, because basically the seasons are becoming more and more binary over here, at least in Portugal, in which we get a wet and dry season with 6 months, November to April, of intense rain, and then scorching hot sun from May to October. So as it stands, it's quite hard to manage the water situation with 101 plants that need assistance at the moment. They are the plants that are all in these black dots you can see. So we've been having discussions around drilling a borehole, but we have ethical concerns on both sides, because basically on the one side, we're aiming to plant water with all our efforts of having the trees there and create a mini ecosystem that will in 10 years time contribute to the increase of soil health and rainfall. And therefore depleting the water tables is not necessary in the long run. But then on the other hand, Portugal is a country constantly threatened by fires. And our land was itself a victim of the tragic year of 2017 in that respect. So having access to water would be potentially life-saving to the whole of Planalto area, which is the last piece of wilderness in the region, measuring 120 square kilometers, comprised of 4 municipalities. It's something we're continuing to debate, but because it costs 17,000 euros, it's also something that we are going to wait to make a decision on. And perhaps realize anyway, we're just going to wait for a sign, so to speak, if it's the right thing to do or not. And this is more or less what's happening with us here. And I welcome any questions or comments you'd like to make. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ines, for sharing. I think we're going to go directly into Eternal Forest because we want to save time to go into breakout rooms, because we prepared something quite special for you. And I think we'll have a little bit of time for questions and answers. And yeah, I keep accumulating inspirations. Thank you so much. It was wonderful. And even that I never visited your project, you made it very tangible through your presentation. So I'm looking forward to coming and join you and planting some trees. I have a few trees in my garden, a few oaks ready to be planted in the ground. So I'll bring them with me. All right, so, and now I will share with you a little bit of Eternal Forest vision, and then I will invite you with a little provocation. So let me see if I can share my screen. Okay, yes. Okay, so my name is Evgenia and I'm an artist and poet. I'm currently based in Portugal. I work internationally and I'm the founder of Eternal Forest Project. What we are doing is we are creating a network of Eternal Forest sanctuaries through art, ecology and community, pretty much what Ines is doing, very, very similar. And our focus is a little bit different though. Our first Eternal Forest sanctuaries are already emerging in Portugal and our vision is global, it's for the whole world. I believe that there are many ways to be a guardian of a forest, many ways to exercise our stewardship for the land. And this project that I've developed over some years, over actually the last 3-4 years, proposes just one way of doing this. This ongoing project has the vision to create and protect old growth forests for those who come after us. So it's a kind of new ecological artwork, which is not so new, that evolves over 1,000 years and hopefully beyond. So my motivation and my inspiration to start this project is already been mentioned pretty much by Nesh, because there were fires in Portugal in 2017. There were really big fires. Half of the country was burning, and I arrived from London. I moved to Portugal in this year. And this project, I guess, is my response to the deforestation and loss of biodiversity in Portugal, but also internationally, globally. With this work, as an artist, as a human being, I'm trying to contribute to rewilding both our planet, but also our psyche. When I saw the level of devastation, and also that level of devastation in Europe, I asked myself, what can I actually do as an artist? And how can I contribute to this situation? And more importantly, I asked myself, what is the missing link? What is that missing space between forests, or their absence actually, and humans? And with this, I developed a series of artworks. I worked for the last 4 years, primarily in Portugal, connecting with local communities and working through several art residencies. And what happened is I just started working between art and ecology by interviewing people, making films, writing poetry based on these interviews, creating visual works, and basically kind of working in the dimension of raising awareness through my work. And then something else happened. I was just showing my film again and again in various locations in different communities. And what I realized is there is a very important question that everybody is holding. What are the alternatives to having, in our case in Portugal, it's monocultures of eucalyptus. And I guess that I was challenged by this question, and I was really curious. And alongside with all these artworks that were going along, coming out of my studio, coming out of my residencies, the work that I really love doing, because it just comes naturally. I came up with an idea. I thought it's really crazy idea, and I applied for a local biennale. It's called Bienal de Coruche. It's in the center of Portugal. And I proposed to them to create a forest sanctuary, a protected forest space to be there for 100 years. And I went there and I worked with the local community on the land of the municipality. And of course, I realized that creating a forest sanctuary, it's a really, really long endeavor. It's like a lifelong dedication, and it really requires the whole community to be behind it. So what I started with as an artist is creating this series of experiences in the forest, because what I saw as a possibility of bringing people and shifting their solely extractive and productive relationship with forest towards more caring, kind of opening really the heart and the mind and seeing beyond the wood, as I say, or beyond fruit and vegetable. So then I realized that maybe from that work, because it was loved by people and I felt it was successful in terms of, I felt maybe there was this missing point that came back to me. I realized that I would actually like to pursue this journey and maybe think of creating many more sanctuaries. So what is a sanctuary? This place is designed through art and community engagement in collaboration with nature, and that's very, very important. So the whole idea is, why don't we actually listen to her? Why don't we listen to what forest and land have to say, whether it's completely degraded and land and absent forest, or maybe it's a place which has some trees left over. And what if with that intention, with the dream of the land, we could actually co-create a longer periods of time. And that space will be protected. It will not be productive space. It will not be for our consumption. It will be for boosting biodiversity and keeping that place there in perpetuity. And I will pick up here just very briefly on what Lila said. I think it's really important that she mentioned that we are co-creating and we are present as human beings. We are not a virus and we don't have to go away. We have to be there, especially from what I have seen in many places in the world. I think the level of degradation that we have caused as humans really requires now our presence and our contribution to restore that balance. So what are we actually doing is we are trying to think how to create 1,000 forest sanctuaries around the world. It's a really big task, and our approach to that is creating a blueprint. So right now we are working on several locations in Portugal, and already 2 of them are in action. The 2 locations are confirmed, and 3rd location is where I live in Ericeira. And my hope is, for example, another location could be cyclic matter. Ines is saying yes, so I'm going to go and explore it, hopefully in May. And my vision is that, let's say we have 6 locations running in parallel. Why do we need blueprint? I believe that if we have locations that have different level of biodiversity, different level of ecology, more or less the land that needs to be, the trees need to be planted, or maybe we do rewilding, which is a case with one project where rewilding is in action. Or maybe it's already a beautiful forest space and it needs to be protected, and maybe it needs a little bit attention, and then it can be protected through installing it as an artwork, as ongoing long-term artwork. And so by creating those spaces in parallel and by encouraging people to step into the guardianship, we say, why don't we call upon the people from the local communities and say, would you like to be the guardians of this local sanctuary? I call it a circle of guardians. And that is a really important. I believe that those places will not stay that long that we wish if we do not have intergenerational continuity of culture, both from the perspective of art, the celebrations, the ceremonies, the circles, the cycles, people sitting together and thinking and deciding what is actually they want to do. And so, of course, the blueprint is also creating a whole network of partnerships and various organizations, scientists, and cultural platforms, because we need all the support that we can get. And I think only together we can do that. I believe that everybody can contribute something to this process on one or another level. There are many different ways, by spreading the message, by helping us to reach out to possible partners, people with the land, funders, trusts, and of course supporting and participating in the global community through Facebook group, which is growing continuously. There is a lot of interest, and small donations via channels that already exist. So I think I covered more or less what I wanted to share. And I think the point that I wanted to make is, I think we need to have our mind open in terms of what is the possible scenarios that each of us can have where they live locally, to participate in this concept, to discover for themselves this concept of being the steward of a small garden or a small patch of land, or maybe connecting with the local community and doing something together. And it really requires one person at a time to just launch it. And I'm really grateful that Patricia shared the movie before in the break, Fools and Dreamers, because it just, and then there is so many examples. There's this beautiful example of Indian person, I can't remember his name, it's a very famous film, person who planted trees. He planted a whole forest single-handedly. But that's beautiful example, it's inspirational. However, I believe that certain places, like, for example, sacred groves that we all know they have existed, they still exist, they are abandoned, they are somewhere hidden in the forest in the Eastern Europe, in India. People are still trying to protect them from cutting down and being encroached by villages and building and so on. Those sacred forests, they have a meaning. And although they have transitioned into the space of taboo in the agriculture period, there is a reason for that, because people kind of lost the reverence and that sacred connection with that space. And what we still observe in indigenous cultures, that there is no separation between the productive forest and that sacred space where we don't touch, we don't go. Sometimes the sacred space is actually cyclical, it's seasonal, it's not necessarily always, you can't take anything from it. But, and I'm not against necessarily productive space, I'm just saying that in our Western, more or less generalized kind of meaning of the world, we have arrived to the point that I think we need to intentionally create those sacred spaces and use these spaces for conservation, for participation as a community, and for a kind of community glue. What would we do there when we go there? And how do we reconstruct or create from scratch those new practices and celebrations and ceremonies and art and so on. So I'm just admitting somebody here as I talk to you. So that's what I wanted to share with you. I'm going to let you know about the links that I want to share about Eternal Forest. I'm just gonna put it here in the chat. But what we will do now, while we still have all this energy from all these beautiful presentations and conversations, is we are going to send you into breakout rooms. And first, I'm going to ask Patricia if you are going to do that after my short intro, or shall I do that? How do you feel?
What do you mean?
I mean,
You mean to do the intro or the breakout rooms? What do you mean?
yes, I will do the intro, and if you could figure out how many breakout rooms we have.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay. Can everybody turn on your video?
Yes, that would be wonderful. Let's do that. But I'm going to read to you really slowly what I prepared, and then we're going to also post it so that you have it in front of you.
How many do you want in each room?
I think it would be nice to have 4 people.
Okay, there's 56 of us. It's 14 rooms. Okay.
Okay, so.
Just tell me when, I'm ready.
Okay, I'm gonna read the intro. Let me just, because I already have this covered. So I'm gonna post information about Eternal Forest. You can grab it later. So the proposition today is being the guardian of the forest. What would it mean to be the guardian of your local forest? Or if you don't have a forest, a garden or a tree? What would it look like and feel like? Would you collaborate with somebody, or would you do this alone? What would be your approach, your process, your method, your strategy, and then your action? And we are inviting you, when you are inside the breakout room, to share your ideas in the circle. You could just briefly introduce yourself and share what is alive in you in response to this question. And when you come back into the main room, I think we will give you, shall we say 10 minutes? Until 21:15. When you come back into the main room, we will ask each group to share briefly the highlights, the learnings, and the wisdom that you captured. I think we are ready.
Okay, there we go.
So with this, maybe we can put our videos on. It would be really good to hear from some people to share what came up for you.
I can share.
Okay.
Please.
Should I share?
Yes.
Sant.
Oh,
So I had a great conversation with Janine Bardo who lives in Brooklyn. And she talked about this park right near her called McKinley Park. And the fact that there's these very old growth oaks there, but also she notices that there's all these seedlings, these sort of natural, that there's the natural seedlings, but then there's also these, they're planting a lot of non-native trees, which is a problem as well in that area. And then she has 3 seedlings from those old growth trees in her yard in Brooklyn. But that she's really interested, she sees that as her forest, as it's an urban forest, and that she's been thinking about getting the community involved in creating a learning center there, where each tree could, be a way of learning and teaching. And so I thought that was really great. And if she wants to add something to that, that's kind of what I got from it. Oh, and also that McKinley Park and those trees are the inspiration for her own artwork. And that she also runs a gallery out of her studio. So that's really, really fabulous. And then I talked about the fact that of course, as I mentioned earlier, I planted a forest in the San Bernardino National Forest, but that's about an hour and 45 minutes from me. And now I live in the Mojave Desert. So I'm planting native trees, mesquites, Palo Verde, and Mexican bird of paradise on land here in the area. But that's sort of just a personal project. But I am very involved in the preservation of Joshua trees. And I'm working with artists and scientists and curating a project and writing a book for 2024 about the impact of climate change on Joshua trees. And there's a lot of people here working together to preserve these very unique and iconic, they're not really trees, they're yuccas, but we call them trees. So anyway, that's my report.
Thank you, San. I think Deborah raised the hand. Deborah, would you like to say something?
Yes, I was in the chat room with Carol Milan and Just Us, and it was very interesting because I learned about Carol's work, which is non-figurative, on paper, very poetic, and inspired by nature. And we found a common point in not just forest, but the riparian zone along rivers, and how this needs to be rewilded or renaturalized with endemic trees, but not only trees, but other plants as well, of course. And this connects with my own work, which is a lot about water and the plants that filter water through their roots, which are very important around natural springs, what they call in French, sources, les sources, the sources, and of course that reminds source of life, and also the lavoirs, the washing pools that are often between the source, and then there's the lavoir, and then there's the stream. And around them are often trees and plants that filter water. For example, not only reeds, but also fig trees, which are endemic in this part of France. And that's one part of my artwork project, is not only doing ephemeral artwork around these sources and lavoirs and streams and rivers, but also in filming and so on, but also renaturalizing, rewilding these spaces. So it was a great conversation with Carol Milan, because she's working on with a group with rewilding the Don River, DON, in where she lives in Ontario. And I was able to contribute the fact that the word Don, D-O-N, is the same great goddess that inspired the name of the Danube River. And this is known in France as well, one of the names of the great goddess. And so that's pretty cool. So that's my report. If you have anything to add, Carol. But anyway, we're going to keep in touch about our different tree and river projects and share with each other what trees we've been able to plant. So it was a great experience. Thank you.
Deborah, thank you so much. I just wanted to say to everybody, please put the links to your works in the chat. And there is another raised hand. Please go for it.
Blessings, everyone. Danalia. Yes, we had a really exciting breakout room. I think we might have been the last to come in because our names were the last on the list. In any case, Amarjit is in near Delhi, and I'm speaking partially because it's 1:30 a.m. in the morning, and he's out on the balcony speaking into the microphone in his earpods, and it was really lovely. So we spent most of the time with his project. My work is quite ongoing and established, but it played a role in our conversation. So he's been away for a long time. He is an architect and a landscape designer. He's concerned about the air quality in Delhi, that many of the children are suffering because of the particulates. And actually, I worked for 2 years in China near Beijing. So I know exactly what it feels like to live in an environment like that. So we first talked about the garden that's in front of his house, but it seems that his parents are tending that very lively. So I said, well, what about a place, a common place, a community place that's near where you are? And so there's lots of little small parks. And so he started to imagine about an idea of, first of all, guerrilla planting trees, and imagining, 20 years down the road with trees, with grown trees and the air quality much better. So I just reflected a bit that in the proposal, there's certainly very inspiring people in India already that he could get in touch with to potentially support his proposal, and that, contemplating around whether you want to do it as a guerrilla thing or really you want to try to enroll the community or the city council in the project itself. That's a choice to make. I said to him where my expertise is, because I'm an ecosexual woman. I've been building relations with water and trees around the world for 12 years. So my expertise is around communication, the etiquette of interrelation. And I said, in looking, the first task, in my opinion, would be to go around and to find a park that was interested in working with you. Because I said it's a mistake to imagine that every tree and every nature being wants to work with humans. Some do and some don't. Most of them do, but some don't. And some don't every day, but mostly do. So this is something that, you approach, you come and sit with them, you sit quietly, you explain who you are, introduce yourself, say you're concerned about the air quality, and would you find out if the tree or the grove there is interested in working with you on this project. And just talked a little bit about waiting for tree to answer and how the different ways that tree can respond. So it was just really, beautiful and lovely. And so he's excited, and we're going to look at, we exchanged emails, and I just said, if there's any way that I can support him, then I'd love to. So he was alive with it, the idea, and even the idea of exchanging, love and talking to a tree was just very, very enlivening. So thank you so much for the opportunity to connect.
Thank you so much for sharing this beautiful approach. And we actually will have some conversations soon about connecting with plants and trees. So watch out. Anna MacArthur raised a hand. Please go for it, Anna.
Thank you. Well, there were three of us. One came in late, and she decided to just stay out because she was occupied with her husband who was sick. So we had Anne-Marie from the UK, from Devon, and Mariana from Portugal, and myself. We decided right away it's a slightly big topic to just have 10 minutes to come up with answers. But what was interesting is first is everyone describing where they live and what their connection was. And Mariana is in Portugal near Lisbon, and she feels very attached to a forest near there. And I think the main feeling for her was that feeling how positive it is that we have wishful thinking, that we can globally reconnect to forest as humans. And, you know, she was acknowledging that it's a big task, but it's very positive that we're going down that trail. And Mariana and Marie, if I'm misstating anything, just raise your hand. Anne-Marie, who's from UK Devon, she is, Devon is the southern part of England, and it's known for its fruit orchards. So her trees and forest are all about tending the orchards. And as she pointed out, it's very interesting because the topic of trees, you come to know it with orchards through food and fruit. And so she's very close to her trees and her orchards, and there's a lot to learn. What she segued down to, and it's something that's very interesting for me as well, is how we think of our lifespan, even if someone lives to be elderly, as that's kind of it. And if you get to know certain trees, they likely have a much longer lifespan. Some have been here before we were born, go on past our birth. And so she was thinking very much about the awareness of timeline and how people could have a better sense of geological time, which I completely agree with. And that it gives them then much less of a separation from the rest of the large picture of what we come out of. My contribution was to say that even though I live like Patricia in Santa Fe, New Mexico, I've been here for 30 years, I travel as well. I know many people that are involved all the years I've been here with the beautiful forest here. I have my commitment elsewhere. I've had life-changing trips to the Amazon rainforest. So I have been working on projects for quite a few years that always segue back to that. And with a specific interest in having spent time down there and done several large projects in Brazil near Manaus, I became intrigued with what could be possible to help the people with sustainable ways of life. And I'm not speaking of the indigenous because they have their ways, but it's a lot of many people that come out of the cities, which are jam-packed, and often that's why they're cutting down the rainforest, or they think cattle ranching is the way. So I think about this with other great forests in the world, that if there was help with the sustainable livelihood, that it would deter the damaging of the rainforest. So I've been very involved with, as an artist, with technology and biomimicry, and I tend to have a lot of ingenuity ideas about how I could help in that way, but not with, my tech solutions are soft tech or low tech. And then I shared, and both the others were interested in as a youth, what really spurred me on was in the last years of high school, we took a wilderness trip for 3 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks, permission to leave high school to hike the wilderness of the Olympic Peninsula. And it's a rainforest, so it's the rainforest of North America. So the emotional change with that in high school, which happened for everyone, either researching the indigenous life, the plant life, the sea life, we all came back different. And that was very much an influence on my life to this moment. So there was questions for others about, you know, reflecting on that. I hope I did a good summation of the three of us, but I will just say in summation, it's already quite sweet and nurturing to just hear from people and tenderly in these different bioregions and their tender relationship to that. It gives me great hope. Thank you.
No, I'm kind of envisioning what our forest guardian class is going to be like here. Ruby. So can everybody hear me? We're going to have to wrap up. Unfortunately, we could have gone on for another 15 minutes for sure, but I'll need a break before our third and final hour. I'll just say real quickly that in our group, a small group, one of the final person, who is Adam Walpert, I don't know if he's still here, yeah, came in at the end, and we were just kind of all sharing about all the ideas we have about forests and what we live by and what we're doing in our yard kind of thing. But he came in with his words of wisdom and basically said, and I'd love to kind of end it on this, is that, you know, until we really have like a kinship with trees and forests, that the idea of just going out and saving the forest kind of thing may not work as well. So it's something that we all need to do first, probably, if we haven't done that already. So thank you, Evgenia. Thank you, Ruby. Thank you, Inez. Lila's already left us, but what a wonderful group. And I look forward to doing more co-hosting events with the Eternal Forest. Okay.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
I am gonna share a short film before our next event with, our next event is The Songs of Trees with the author David George Haskell. Right now I'm gonna share my screen and share a film with Dr. Samard.